Good morning, welcome to Breakfast with Sally Nugent and Dan Walker.
Our headlines today. A difficult winter ahead with soaring energy prices, but the government insists a price cap must remain in place to protect consumers.
We're going to have to heat the house because we can't be cold. So we're going to have to basically cut back on food.
The Prime Minister meets the President. Climate change, Afghanistan and a US trade deal are all up for discussion.
The most wanted ticket in town. Tom Parker reunites with his bandmates for a charity concert to help fellow brain cancer patients.
Good morning in sport. England's cricketers won't play in Pakistan next month. The ECB have cancelled the men's and women's tours over concerns of player welfare and about travel to the region.
Good morning. There's some mist and fog around this morning. Some of that is dense in the southeastern corner. That will lift, and for much of the country, it's going to be dry with sunny spells, but it will cloud over later in the northwest with some light rain or drizzle. I'll have all the details in about 10 minutes.
Good morning. It is Tuesday, September the 21st. Our top story. Energy price caps, which help prevent consumers paying too much for gas and electricity, will remain in place despite some firms claiming the system is not sustainable.
Surging wholesale gas prices have caused 4 suppliers to go bust, with 4 more on the brink. In a joint statement last night, the Business Secretary, Kwasi Kwarteng, and industry regulator Ofgem said the caps will remain. Here's John Donaldson with more.
The government insists there's no question of the lights going out this winter, but as energy prices soar, some are worried.
My bills are already at breaking point. And then, going into the winter, I've got a daughter and obviously myself, and it's a worry. It's a real big worry. And the only way to sort of, we're going to have to heat the house because we can't be cold. So we're going to have to basically cut back on food.
And food supply issues will be on the agenda when the government meets with the Food and Drink Federation later today. The huge spike in energy prices means CO2 gas suppliers have shut down production. The Soft Drinks Association now says they've only got a few days' supply of carbon dioxide left, and meat producers have warned of price rises within the week if slaughterhouses can't get enough access to CO2. High demand for gas as the global economy picks up, coupled with a reduced supply, are behind a surge in wholesale gas prices. But after an emergency meeting with energy firms, the government, alongside with the industry regulator Ofgem, reiterated last night that there would be no question of removing the cap, which stops suppliers passing on those wholesale price rises to consumers.
It protects and has protected millions of customers from sudden increases in global prices this winter. We are committed to that price cap and it will remain in place.
That means more small energy suppliers, unable to turn a profit, will likely go bust. The government says it's considering offering state-backed loans to those that survive, but insists it will not be bailing out failed companies. John Donaldson, BBC News.
Well, let's get a little more on this now with Nina. Now, it sounds like bad news for the smaller energy firms, but what about consumers?
Yeah, so this energy storm is seeing the wholesale price go through the roof, isn't it? Yesterday, we talked about providers going bump and we asked whether the government would bail them out. The answer was a firm no. Kwasi Kwarteng saying there will be no rewards for failure or mismanagement. The taxpayer should not be expected to prop up companies with flawed business models. Instead, what they said is they will guarantee loans to larger companies who will absorb those customers. What is integral, they said, is that the energy price cap stays in place. So that is where there is a limit to how much more you will pay on a variable rate. And that is controversial within the industry because they say when that's limited, we can't make more money when there's a crisis. And ultimately, millions of households will now be ending up paying more for their energy. They will probably pay more because those cheap deals are disappearing from the market, and that 12% hike for variables is about to kick in, and there might be another one come the spring. The question this morning for millions of households is what should you do if your provider has gone bump or if you're concerned that they might? The first thing is do not panic. But what you should do while you're waiting to see who your new provider is gather a meter reading, take a photograph, also have a look online at your accounts, at your paper bills, make sure you have them to hand. Anything that ensures you get a fair deal when you end up with your new provider. The problem is, though, Dan, and we warned you about this yesterday, brace yourself, because it is likely your prices will go up. You won't get as good a deal as the one you're on, probably. As competition falls, as the number of companies reduces, we are all set to pay more for our energy. And there is a warning that those on prepayment meters, often the most vulnerable economically, will end up seeing the biggest hikes in prices.
Yeah, I got a text last night saying I was moving from one company to another, and they contact me with the details of how much more I'm going to have to pay in a few more weeks' time.
And an anxious time for people waiting to see how much that will be when people are worried about how much they've got in their accounts at the minute.
OK. Nina, thank you very much for that. Plenty more on that a bit later on for you.
Now, a vigil has taken place for a woman and 3 children who were found dead at a house in Derbyshire. Hundreds of people gathered in the village of Killamarsh near Sheffield to lay flowers and messages of condolence in memory of Terry Harris, her 13-year-old son John Paul, her 11-year-old daughter Lacey, and Lacey's friend Connie Gent, who was also 11. A 31-year-old man is being held on suspicion of murder.
Boris Johnson will meet President Biden at the White House today to discuss topics including climate change, trade and the situation in Afghanistan.
It's the first time a British Prime Minister has met a president at the White House since Theresa May visited Donald Trump there in 2017. Our political correspondent Helen Catt reports on the build-up to another historic meeting.
It was all smiles in the sunshine when Boris Johnson met Joe Biden in person for the first time just 3 months ago at the G7 summit in Cornwall. Mr Johnson says he hasn't had much of a chance to get to know the US president, but he says they have a genuinely terrific relationship and see eye to eye on all sorts of things. He'll be hoping the reception is as warm when they meet in the Oval Office in the White House later. What would have been one of Boris Johnson's key requests has already been fulfilled. In a surprise move yesterday, the US lifted its travel ban on UK citizens. But other issues could be more difficult. Boris Johnson is expected to push the US to increase its climate commitments ahead of November's crucial climate change summit, COP26, which will take place in Glasgow.
It's the moment when we have to grow up and take our responsibilities. I think we go through, a period of glorious indifference about the world. We've been through that. We've been through our childhood, if you like. We now got to realise that this is a problem that requires grip.
The two men are also expected to discuss the situation in Afghanistan after the two countries withdrew troops. And what about a trade deal? Boris Johnson has been pretty downbeat about the chances of that happening quickly. He told reporters that American negotiators were pretty ruthless and that he would rather get a deal that works for the UK than get a quick deal. Boris Johnson is meeting several world leaders this week, but this meeting will certainly be the most closely watched. Helen Catt, BBC News.
We are joined now by our chief political correspondent, Adam Fleming. Morning to you, Adam. Lots for the two leaders to talk about. How much of an impact will Boris Johnson be hoping to make?
Well, actually, some of the wins are stacking up for the UK already, being part of that US-Australia security pact that was announced last week. The fact that transatlantic travel is going to get started again in November. And also, when Joe Biden speaks to that big United Nations meeting that's happening today, there's lots of speculation that he's going to increase the US's contributions to less rich countries to fight climate change as part of that process leading up to the big climate change conference that the UK is going to host in Glasgow in November. So I think that will be chalked up as another diplomatic win for the UK, although it might be just as much about US interests as it is about British ones. Although there's a bit of speculation as well, though, that in the other direction, the US is not that impressed by the UK's chairmanship of that conference so far. We'll wait and see. But also, I just always think back to these big meetings between British prime ministers and American presidents. And quite often, rather than the really big diplomatic stuff, it's actually the personal stuff that we all remember. I just remember Tony Blair and George W. Bush joking about using the same toothpaste. Gordon Brown getting into the golf cart that George W. Bush then drove off really fast and looking totally horrified. David Cameron going to a basketball game with Obama, not really knowing what was going on. And then just remember remember the last time a British Prime Minister was in the White House, Theresa May, her face when Donald Trump grabbed her hand to walk down that ramp.
Oh, don't remind me. Adam, thank you very much indeed.
See the headlines as they happen and watch BBC News live in the app and get the full story with bbc.co.uk/news. Follow the story for all the latest with BBC News.